Tjat een hippie uit de bol, stamp een mumpot in zijn hol. Alcohol, alcohol.
Welcome back to The Place of Places, an in-depth analysis of William Saroyan's 1972 memoir, Places Where I've Done Time. Today we investigate Chapter 12, The White Fawn Saloon, Mariposa Street, Fresno, 1916. At first glance, an 8-year-old in a saloon in Fresno doesn't sound like a very wholesome story. But surprisingly, this chapter is quite wholesome. In it, young William enters the White Fawn Saloon daily in order to sell newspapers to the men in the bar. He loved the way it looked, with its long bar, big framed mirrors, semi-nude oil paintings, flags of California and the U.S., the smell, the spittoons, the hum of men talking, the free lunch and poker in back. Perhaps this is his first exposure to saloons and barflies, the type he idealizes in his stories, and especially in his Pulitzer-winning play, The Time of Your Life, in 1939. Here he tells us that every class of men ate or drank at the saloon, and that some of them were quite generous and kind to the young newsie. This is a strictly male arena, no women allowed by society's standards, which also must have intrigued him, coming from a house filled with women, his sisters, his mother, his grandmother. So the saloon may have been a window into a world he had to find for himself, with no introduction. But to start, William takes us on a little tour of Fresno, 1916. This was a flourishing time for downtown Fresno before it fell into urban decay in the late 20th century. The White Fawn Saloon no longer exists, but it was down the street from the Temple Bar building, a building name that interested William. He tells us it was at the corner of Van Ness and Mariposa. Back in 1916, Van Ness was called K Street. The Temple Bar building was built in 1889 by developers S.N. Griffith and R.B. Johnson. The first floor held a drugstore, restaurant, saloon, and small stores. The second floor held attorney offices, and the third floor was a boarding house, mostly for those who worked in the building. It was very near the courthouse, designed to attract lawyers, and many of Fresno's most prominent attorneys had their offices in the building. In 1948, its 2 upper floors were removed, and the entire structure was demolished in 1964. It became a parking lot for some time, and then the Fresno County Office of Education. The developers S.N. Griffith and R.B. Johnson would go on to establish the Feingold Land and Water Company in 1891, which diverted water from the San Joaquin River to a section of Fresno County called Pulaski, which they intended to turn into a major city, and then failed. These were the early years of California's water wars, and the complete reformation of California's waterways in order to build cities where fresh water didn't naturally flow. Saroyan tells us that there is an older Temple Bar in London. This is a ceremonial entrance to the city of London. The term bar was synonymous with gate. He then compares the English to the Armenians, noting that there were some similarities. And indeed, Saroyan's writing was heavily influenced by English or Anglo writers. But he also makes this point to compare both the Armenians and the English to Fresno's Chinese, who he considered the most different of the ethnicities in Fresno. Fresno had a thriving Chinatown, and like in many American cities, it was occupied by both Chinese and Japanese residents, and surrounded by the neighborhoods of other immigrants on the west side of the railroad tracks. The Japanese and Sikh immigrants, he mentions, generally came later than the Chinese, and worked in the vineyards, he tells us. The first Japanese arrived in the 1890s to farm at a muscat grape vineyard, and then ranchers began recruiting Japanese workers from Sacramento and Stockton. The sick laborers came in the early 1900s. All of these groups were targeted by the state and national legislatures as part of Asian exclusion laws and were prevented from gaining citizenship. In the 1860s, when the railroad was built in Fresno, it was Chinese workers who laid track and began to build Fresno into a city. Even though they were some of Fresno's first residents, they were still considered foreign, even among the city's other immigrant groups. Though the Armenians faced much racism and social exclusion, these anti-Asian laws spared them, creating a divide between disdained immigrants and favored immigrants. Still, here William recreates what he as a young boy must have felt, looking at these different races, feeling that the Chinese spoke, walked, and stood differently from all others. There is often subtle racism taught to children, and we see that even when he was a kid, those other groups were treated differently. But Fresno was to become one of the most diverse places in the state, if not the country, and his time as a teenager working in the vineyards helped give him access to all types of people. In his career, he touted the universality of mankind, while also celebrating cultural and ethnic differences and the struggles faced by immigrants of all stripes. At times, his individualism was at odds with the concept of the community of man, so this is a complicated topic in his life and writings. So, young William liked to spend time in the White Fawn Saloon, where the drinkers were ordinary bearded men, many with concealed revolvers, and some were professional men, perhaps lawyers. One man gives William a silver dollar for a paper, though it should only cost 5 cents. The man was plain, a farmer or an ordinary working man. William says he was not a town man, not a professional man. Some men he recognized there, like E.Y. Foley, who bought all of his papers one rainy evening so that William wouldn't have to stand in the rain. E.Y. Foley was a notable fruit packer in Fresno. But this mysterious, generous man, the one William keeps going back to the bar to find again, he never reappears. This almost seems like the seed of the protagonist Joe from The Time of Your Life. Joe sits in the bar and offers advice and money and drinks and pontificates on the human condition. This stranger had a big impact on William, who for his entire life admired the soul of the generous working man, who sought no personal fortune but supported his community, even if it was on the seedier side. Let's put this place on the Soroyan map and move on.